Around the world, tattoos have become increasingly acceptable in mainstream society, with some of the most popular styles inspired by Pacific designs. But for many years, the earliest records of traditional Polynesian tattoos have been hidden away in museums and libraries. Now, as these institutions digitise their collections, the original body art of the Pacific is being revealed. Liam Cochrane reports.
Show me your tattoo.
What was once a statement of tribalism or rebellion is now an increasingly common sight on people of all ages and backgrounds. Tattoos are also enjoying a revival in the Pacific, where in some places they fell out of favour when Christianity took root. The act of tattooing was a way of marking a person's role in a community and their own story, with unique symbols painstakingly etched using sharpened bone. Tricia Allen is an American-born cultural anthropologist turned tattoo artist.
Polynesian tattoo has really caught on worldwide, and for the most part, the indigenous artists and people don't have an issue with that as long as people aren't copying verbatim. It's certainly been influential everywhere, not only here in Australia, but Europe especially.
When the early European explorers sailed into the Pacific, they sketched some of the ornately decorated people they came across. These illustrations provide historians and tattoo artists with the best record of traditional designs. There's plenty of material from Hawaii and the Moccasin Islands, part of French Polynesia, but hardly anything from some other islands.
Tahitian resource material is very rare. There's very few illustrations. There's a lot of written documentation, but it's locked away in rare museum collections and vaults, places like the Mitchell Library, which has a fantastic collection. So sometimes what the islanders have access to is extremely limited, and they wind up reviving styles that truly are not their own.
As well as being a much sought-after tattooist at exhibitions like this one in Melbourne, Tricia Allen also trawls the world's libraries and museums, researching the history of Polynesian tattooing. A breakthrough came during a trip to Australia earlier this year.
Staying at a friend's house who was an art history teacher and looking through some of his books, discussing drawings with him, and I realized, Mitchell Library's here. Guess where we're going tomorrow?
The Mitchell Library in Sydney holds one of the world's best collections of documents relating to the Pacific.
That night we're 3 o'clock in the morning looking up, do they have any Arago? And I was very pleased to find that some of the early Hawaiian drawings that we did not even know existed were here in the Mitchell Library. I had looked here about 8 years ago and they weren't online yet. They now are, and they have a 64-page book of original drawings by the artist Jacques Arago.
This is an album made by a man called Jacques Arago, who was a draftsman or an artist on a French expedition of exploration that was travelling throughout the Pacific between sort of 1817 and 1820 or so. So this is the primary source material, if you like, the original negatives of an expedition, and in that sense it's the most immediate kind of record we have of interaction between Europeans and Pacific people. And you can see in these illustrations how he's been interested in recording the tattooing on the Pacific Island faces that he encountered.
The New South Wales state government has given the Mitchell Library $32 million to digitise their collection, including these early Pacific drawings.
Pacific Island communities will be able to see images of their forebears that they've previously been unable to get access to, and obviously one of the great things we think about this kind of digitisation is, in a way, we're returning these cultural artefacts, these very important cultural artefacts, to communities for whom they're the most meaningful.
One of the reasons it's important to see the originals is that they were often altered back in France or England by engravers who converted the field sketches into colourful illustrations for books. Take this example of a Jacques Arago drawing made in Hawaii.
This is the original. It didn't fit with the notion of the romantic noble savage to have a musket. So the musket is switched to a spear. In fact, in this one, the actual tattoo patterns are reversed.
Tricia Allen says the internet is littered with misinformation about the meanings behind Polynesian tattoos, and she's trying to put things right through her books, lectures, and of course, tattoos. These days, an electric needle is the preferred device in most cases. But for those who do want the traditional tapping method, the sharpened bone has been replaced by stainless steel tips for better hygiene. When it comes to the study of Pacific tattoos, there's no missing masterpiece, no Rosetta Stone. It's a matter of putting the pieces together from around the world.
You'd expect that as more time passes, more information is lost. Unfortunately, that's not the case. What's happening is we're finding more and more. As the museums and libraries do get their collections online and digitized. So there really is a lot of information accessible, and I guess that's the Rosetta Stone, is knowing how to use these collections in libraries and getting in there and getting access, and then it takes, you know, someone like me or whoever to republish the material and make it accessible to the Indigenous people, ideally. It's their culture and they do have the right to have their hands on it.